Chair, I think in your script, if we do manage to go live, I think it'd be useful for you to explain why we're a few minutes late. We've had technical problems. It looks like we're now live on YouTube.
Okay, great. So does that mean we're ready to roll?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, good morning, everyone.
If we do manage to go live, I think it'd be useful.
We've got that feedback again. I think someone needs to mute themselves.
Amanda, that'll be on yours.
Yeah, I'm just closing it down again, so it plays it back to me. Okay, I think we're okay now.
Right. Stuck. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the People and Culture Committee meeting today on the 4th of March. We are streaming live on YouTube, and apologies, we are 12 minutes late, later than scheduled at 10:30, and that was due to some technical difficulties, but we needed to resolve because we needed to go streaming live. So welcome to everyone here, our officers and our members, and of course, anyone watching live on YouTube. Welcome and thank you for joining us. So first of all, we will start with apologies for absence. I'm just checking who is here because I can see a few who are listed who are here, which is great.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Someone's managed to do it.
Here's someone there. Okay, great. So I've got a list of attendees, right? So I don't think we've had any other apologies apart from, yeah, no one's apologised who isn't here. Is that right?
So I think we've got councillors Bromley, Councillor Hopkinson, I've got apologies from, so that's one apology.
Okay.
Councillor Jacobs is here. Councillor Johnson, I think we've got apologies from.
Okay.
Khan is here, yourself. Councillor Massey, we have apologies from.
Right.
Councillor Myers, I think apologies, and Councillor Tucker is here. So I've
Councillor Myers is here.
Oh, sorry, missed you. Yes, I've ticked you as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's not listed in my notes, but they may have been updated since this version. That's fine. Okay, emergency evacuation procedures per your own place of residence at the moment, and I'm sure anyone in the office knows what they are. Declarations of interest, and I think we do have a few in accordance to some of the items coming up. Do you want to go through that, Amanda?
Yeah, shall I explain that briefly? So we have a couple of items on the agenda, namely the pay policy statement at item 7, the annual review of the Chief Fire Officer's pay at 8, and also a matter in the exempt section, which affect a number of officers. So basically the way it works is the Chief Fire Officer's pay is linked to the pay of the statutory officers, myself and the Treasurer, but also the Service Leadership Board members, because they're all paid a percentage of the Chief Fire Officer's pay. So for that reason, what we're going to try and achieve, I don't know how easy it's going to be with technology, we're going to try to achieve that people leave the room while we discuss those two items, and then they come back in and rejoin the meeting.
Okay, fine. Yeah, hopefully that will work quite well, as long as the host keeps an eye on the waiting room. Okay, good. So next bit then is, unless anyone else has any declaration of interest they'd like to declare. No? Okay, good. So on to Chair's business, and as already said at the beginning of the meeting, this meeting will be recorded and live streamed onto our YouTube channel. And by remaining on the Zoom call, attendees are agreeing for their images and voice recording to be posted. Now, if you'll bear with me, I will go through the Zoom guidelines. In view of the current restrictions that COVID-19 has placed on everybody, including the Fire Authority, this meeting of the People and Culture Committee will take place using Zoom this morning. To ensure the meeting goes as smoothly as possible, there are several points and guidelines that I would like to run through briefly with members and for the benefit of any members of the public who are watching the live stream of the meeting. Once the meeting begins, attendees will be placed onto mute unless invited to speak by me, the chair of the meeting. If members wish to speak or have a question, please indicate this by sending a message using the chat function. This will be monitored, and at the end of each item, there will be an opportunity for members to speak in turn. So that's to say, raising hands, etc., you can do, but if you could also highlight that you want to speak or have a question in the chat function, please. The open section of the Fire Authority meeting will be video recorded and live streamed onto the Avon Fire Authority, Avon Fire and Rescue Service YouTube channel. By attending a meeting via Zoom, attendees are agreeing for their images and voice recording to be posted. Due to the reduction in the length of meetings, it is intended that for reports provided for informational noting, a full discussion will not take place. That doesn't exclude anyone from asking questions, of course. Please keep any mobile phones on mute to avoid interruptions and interference with sound. So I hope that is understood by anyone. I think most of us are quite familiar now with all of that. Scrolling back, so just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight, if I can, and take the opportunity in this forum, is I did become aware of some quite serious issues presented. Of course, it's important to get the full story and not just refer to what is seen in the press, but regarding Gloucestershire Fire and Rescue. I don't know if anyone else has been familiar with this. It does seem as though it's things that date back to perhaps October last year, when there was quite a lot of press and publicity around some really serious allegations of racism within that fire and rescue service. I raise it because I've been alerted to it. And I think, sometimes part of our work is to reach out, particularly to neighbouring fire and rescues, to see how we can work together and how we can show solidarity and learning. I don't believe, and I don't wish to believe, that we have any of the kind of issues that are going on over there. But I wanted to highlight it to us as a group, and also if anybody has any suggestions, or whether they think it is important that we try to work collaboratively on matters such as this. Does anybody have any view on that? I know it's throwing a bit of information out to you that you may not have had chance to consider. I can, of course, also perhaps share some of the links to what I'm talking about.
Chair, can I suggest we briefly introduce everyone before we start any?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Is that all right? Thank you. So shall I go first? I'm Amanda Brown. I'm the clerk to the Fire Authority. Shall I get people to go along the screen or Chair?
Yeah, if you, Amanda, if you pull up the participants list and then just go through it as it appears to you.
Okay, so Simon, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. Simon Shilton, one of the Assistant Chief Fire Officers here at Avon Fire and Rescue. And
Chief, please.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm Mick Cronall. I'm the Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive of Avon Fire and Rescue Service. So good morning to everybody.
And Angie.
Morning, everyone. I'm Angie Feely. I'm the Director of Corporate Services here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
And Steve.
Morning, everyone. I'm Steve Gravy, Democratic Services, Bristol City Council.
Yeah. And the other Steve.
Morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Murray. I'm Temporary Assistant Chief Officer for Avon Fire and Rescue.
Thank you very much. Karen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Shield. I'm the Human Resources Manager for Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Thank you, Karen. Richard.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Richard Stokes, Cultural Inclusion Manager at Avon Fire and Rescue Service. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you. Apologies, Councillor Tucker, if you'd like to go next.
Sorry, that's two Richards. Richard Tucker, North Somerset Council, Western Supermayor, Middleton Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Bromley.
And Bath and North East.
Thank you. You're breaking up a bit, but I know you have connection issues. Councillor Jacobs.
Hello, Councillor Ruth Jacobs, North Somerset Council, Wixon Lawrence and St George's.
Thank you, Councillor Khan.
Sultan Khan, Councillor for Eastville Ward, Bristol.
Thank you, Councillor Myers.
Yeah, Councillor Paul Myers, Midsome Norton Redfield in Bath and North East Somerset.
And Julie, sorry I missed you. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm Julie Caddick. I work in the Principal Officer Suite in headquarters.
Thank you. And Chair, I'm sure you can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Clearlake, also
Let's do it.
Bit of background noise there. Councillor Clearlake, I do chair this committee and I'm a Bristol City Councillor representing the ward of Cotton and apologies. It's I do often forget that we are streaming live to people and not everyone knows who we are, although we're all familiar to each other. So apologies for jumping ahead there. I should have followed the script to the letter. Anyway, if everybody has introduced themselves, has our chief introduced himself? Yes. Okay, I must have blanked out at that point, apologies. Right, okay, so back on to what I've said. I have just posted in the chat, anyone who wishes to look at that in any more depth, some of the concerns at Gloucestershire Fire and Rescue. It does include a clip with the chief talking there. And perhaps if it's too much information to take on now, it's something that we can perhaps come back to, but I would like to hear what other members and officers think on the matter. Does anybody have a comment, or should we move on?
I'd like to comment, please, Chair.
Okay, great.
I'm aware of the report, as you're right, came out last year, and there was a short audio piece from Nathan Lewis, who is a retired firefighter from Gloucester Fire and Rescue Service, who highlighted issues of racism, personally experienced by himself and other firefighters. And I'm aware that the chief there has also put out a statement to say that he is aware of a few minority that have been sort of perpetrators of racism, but feels that it's actually not a systemic issue there in the organisation. I also join a number of national and local forums, BME-led forums, that include other fire and rescue services, West Midlands, London, Merseyside, and these issues we are talking about on a regular basis. So, as far as Avon Fire and Rescue Service is concerned, I can say that, we haven't experienced the severity of these types of cases, but we are collaborating and discussing with other fire and rescue services to share best practice, get a better understanding, and support our BME colleagues in all fire and rescue services.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thanks for that bit of update, Rich. I know you're going to more depth about some of the work we're doing as well a bit later in your report. I did also want to take the opportunity, because there is sometimes a bit of lack of understanding or confusion on the matter, but I wanted to highlight that Bristol City Council did this week pass a reparations motion, a motion for atonement and reparations for Bristol's involvement in the transatlantic traffic in enslaved Africans, which many people understand to be the slave trade. I raised that because I just wanted to share with members that really what the motion is asking for, it's asking for a few things, but it's central to that is really supporting African heritage communities in Bristol to come up with their own reparations plan, their own plan of healing. We know that systemic racism and racism is a result of centuries old history, if you like, but it's still very much present today. So it's about that. And also the main call of the motion is asking the council, which is agreed to do now, is to lobby the government for an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth and reparatory justice. So central to that is allowing people of African descent, African heritage, on a global scale really, but focused on Bristol, to allow themselves to be heard on the matter. So I thought it was worth briefing everyone, and to say as well, it's about a holistic repair process that goes way beyond just a payout. So I really wanted to get that across to people. It's not about compensation. It's not about asking the taxpayer to give anyone who happens to be Black any money. So let's just crush that notion right here and now. I hope that makes sense to everyone, and thank you for allowing me to say that. So we now get into the business of the meeting. Let me get back on track. Right, so we just need to agree the minutes from our last meeting that was held on the 10th of December. I hope everyone's had a chance to go through them. Yes, Amanda?
One correction has been brought to my attention this morning, so if I could have that recorded. So at paragraph 21, sub-bullet 1 of the minutes, the the firm RSM are wrongly described as HR consultancy firm. In fact, if it can now say Avon Fire and Rescue Service commissioned their internal auditors, RSM, to conduct a review. So that's the new wording. At the moment, it says commissioned HR consultancy firm, RSM, but it should say commissioned their internal auditors, RSM, to conduct a review. That was the only correction that's been brought to my attention.
Okay, if there are no other corrections, I will propose the minutes. Can I have someone to second them? That was Councillor Khan, thank you very much. Right, we don't have any public access statements today, so we will now move to agenda item 7. I think this is where we do a bit of technical stuff, and Julie, I think you will send people out of the meeting who may have declaration of interest.
I think I may be relying on Simon to help me with this. I think I'm now the host, not Julie.
Okay, fine.
I don't know at all how to move someone into a waiting room.
Right, bear with us, everyone.
Yeah.
You go into chat participants, Amanda. If you hover over the individual's name and press more, the list will come up and say place in the waiting room.
Okay, right. So let me try and do it. So what I'm about to do is to transfer into the waiting room the members of the Service Leadership Board. So don't disappear. We will want you later. Okay. I need Simon to remain in the room for one item. Who else do I need to do? Steve, trying to find you. Now I can't find you as a name. Where are you?
Just put him in for you, Amanda.
Okay.
Just put him into the waiting room for you. I think that's everybody.
Okay. Chair, the reason I've asked Assistant Chief Fire Officer Shilton to remain in the room is I think you might have a couple of questions about the pay policy statement that he can help us with, as it's his area of responsibility. I hope that's okay.
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, that's fine by me. Is that agreed by everyone else? Okay, fine. So let's get on to agenda item 7 then, which is the pay policy statement for 21-22.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my paper. You are being asked to review the proposed pay policy statement for the financial year beginning on the 1st of April 21 and to recommend its approval to the Fire Authority. So if you agree that document today, you will see it again at the Fire Authority meeting on the 24th of March. So every year we issue a pay policy statement. It's a requirement that we do so under the Localism Act 2011. And there is a whole list of things that that pay policy statement must include. It must include the remuneration of its chief officers, which is why a number of them are now in the waiting room. Remuneration of its lowest paid employees are then ratios as between the remuneration of the chief officers and the medium of the employees and what they're earning. So you will see that I've attached a proposed statement at Appendix A, and I'm going to go through that very briefly with you in a second. What I should bring to your attention is that also because Avon Fire Authority employs 250 or more staff, we are also obliged to publish our gender pay gap statistics. Now, we should normally do that by the 31st of March each year. Now, as you know, last year was a bit of an unusual year because of COVID. And on the 24th of March 2020, the Government Equalities Office and the Equality and Human Rights Commission announced that it decided to suspend enforcement of the gender pay gap deadlines for the last financial year, 2019/20. That was due to the challenges which were basically presented to everyone by the coronavirus. Now, what I can report is that despite that, our Gender Pay Gap Report 2019 was published last year and presented to this committee last May. So we did still manage to produce a report. Now, the only thing you need to be aware of is that this pay policy statement, which I'm asking you to approve today, doesn't include gender pay gap figures as yet, because those statistics are not available as at today's date. And you'll note that we're at the beginning of March. So that's why normally you collect them right up to the end of the month. So with your permission, I am also seeking as a recommendation that I be authorised to allow those details to this statement as soon as they're published. And also we will voluntarily publish BAME pay gap statistics as well. So I don't think that's a legal responsibility yet, but we will include both. So if I can then move, please, to Appendix A. So if you're able to see that on your screens, I'll just take you through the salient points. The introduction basically tells you why in law we have to produce this document. And then you will see that we have a rather complicated system at fire authorities, which I've had to grapple with, which is that all the remuneration for people at are on different terms and conditions, and it's very confusing, and Karen's nodding, so she knows it's very complicated. So for the remuneration of chief fire officers, you have what's called the Gold Book, which sets out their terms and conditions. And you will see that in relation to other staff, they have different books. So uniformed and operational staff, they have a grey book, and corporate staff who do the supporting functions are on what's called a green book. So that's your first complicated factor. The other complicated factor is that the terms and conditions for each of these different books has announcements on pay at different times of the year. So it can't just be the same that everybody's pay awards are announced on, say, the 1st of January. Everyone is treated differently. So for chief fire officers, the National Joint Council announced their pay award on the 1st of January each year. But for other uniformed personnel on Grey Book, their announcements are from the 1st of July each year. And then for corporate staff, Green Book, their announcements are on the 1st of April each year. So you can see this is a bit of a nightmare to grapple with. Now, what I discovered was that all the announcements last year were late, probably due to COVID. So we're behind. So what I'm trying to explain is that the pay set out in this document, albeit correct as at today's date, is in some respects already out of date. So the good example of that is the Chief Fire Officer's pay. His pay award for 1st of January 2020 was only announced in November last year. So the figures in this document include the figures for January 2020, but we haven't had an announcement for pay increase for January 21. So I've done my best is what I'm saying. I've pulled together all the up-to-date information, but this is going to have to be a bit of a living document this year. So as announcements are made, we can update the figures, okay? So I hope that's explained it. If you then go further through the document, the next bit I should explain to you is the pay for the Chief Fire Officer at paragraph 6.1. And it's a little confusing that there are two headings in that table, one called existing post holders and one called new appointments. The reason for that is back in March 2018, your committee decided that the Chief Fire Officer's pay was slightly higher than the national average and that it should be brought down. So when your current Chief Fire Officer was appointed, he accepted basically a pay cut. So he was covering the role as a temporary post holder, and then he was formally appointed. And he took a pay cut and went down to the new appointment rate. But some of his supporting officers, and this includes Assistant Chief Fire Officer Shilton, who's present, is actually his pay is calculated as a percentage of the old rate because he's an existing member of staff. So that's why you've got two sets of figures in there. So hopefully that makes sense. The rest of the paper, I think, is self-explanatory. So the pay comparators are all set out at paragraph 6.2. So, you know, the comparison of the Chief Fire Officer's pay to that of the median basic pay of all the other staff is set out there. And this also assumes, of course, that the next item on the agenda relating to the Chief Fire Officer's pay will be approved by you because I've used those figures in both papers. So if we have a different view on the next paper, then we will need to come back to this one. But I'm sorry, that was a bit long-winded. I hope that's explained it for you all.
That was useful. Thank you, Amanda. Do we have any points or questions on that? I did just want to clarify, though it may be sort of stating the obvious and asking the obvious, but just on point 5 of the appendix, the statement must state the definition of lowest paid employees adopted by the authority. And it just says Avon Fire Authority is a living wage employer. So basically we're saying our definition is lowest paid employee are those who are on the living wage. Just doesn't state that. It obviously implies it quite heavily, but it just didn't, I didn't actually find this is our statement on what is the lowest paid employee, but I take it to mean people who are on the living wage, and that is our lowest paid employee because we do meet the living wage.
Yeah, I think I'd need to defer to others, but I don't know whether there is anybody on the staff at the moment who goes down as low as the living wage. I know it's our policy never to go below that, but I think Karen's got her hand up so she can help us with that.
I can clarify that. So obviously you've got the national minimum wage, and then Avon Fire and Rescue Service or Avon Fire Authority committed some time ago to pay the real living wage, which obviously is somewhat higher. So the nationally agreed salaries for Green Book staff goes below that level. So for example, people like our cooks, on fire stations, some of our very junior administrative staff, and people maybe that deliver the mail, particularly from our Nova Way stores department, they would be the type of staff that normally would be on the very minimum salary band. So what we did was we deleted some years ago, we deleted those lowest grades and committed to pay all of those staff the real living wage. And obviously that is reviewed annually each year and increases, and that's the most recent pay increase nationally that was agreed. I hope that makes sense and clarifies the position.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I think Councillor Khan, you had your hand up.
Right, yeah, so on 6.1, where it says existing post holders, CFO is 155, and then new appointments 146. So that was the pay cut.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. So the predecessor was paid at the existing post holder's rate, whereas your current chief took a pay reduction when he was appointed.
So and that was 146. And so what would be the now? Have I missed that?
The now is the new appointment rate. So the now, the problem is now applies, could be under either column depending on who you're talking about. But for the chief fire officer, the now is the new appointment rate. But post holders who were already in post when your chief fire officer was appointed, they'd be paid under the existing post holders rate. So that would include the 2 current assistant chief fire officers. Karen's nodding, so I'm sure that's right.
Okay. So after the pay cut 146, but you said it should have been noted or recorded or something like that. You said from January. And then you said it will be a living documents. I mean, is that going to change? 146 going to change over this year at some point?
No, so what I should have explained, sorry, the figures in the table include the 2% award that was announced from the 1st of January 2020. So that figure 146047 won't change until the next pay award, which is due from 1st of January 21, but might not be announced for quite some time because the last one wasn't announced until November.
Okay, and do they go by a sort of a different percentage each year, or goes to a sort of a fixed percentage each year?
I think it's considered afresh every year, depending on various circumstances, but Karen might be able to assist us with that.
Good morning, Councillor. Thank you for asking the question. Normally it is around about 2%. That seems to be the average for public sector pay, but it's negotiated nationally each year. So it obviously does have the option to vary. And obviously each year the trade unions put in a bid for maybe higher, and obviously consultation and negotiation happens on a national basis. So I would expect it to be around about 2%, and we budget accordingly, but of course it could be slightly higher or slightly lower than that. Obviously we haven't been updated on those national negotiations at this point in time.
So this, okay, that's a very important point here for me to understand. Actually, I didn't understand that before, or maybe never looked into it. So the pay increase for public sector is each year goes up by a percentage, of course, it depending on the negotiation.
There was a number of years where it was frozen, so I thought, sure, it's the same in your councils, in your local authorities, where I can't remember for all of the years, but there was a number of years where, particularly for corporate staff, your Green Book employees, which is the same in councils, where no pay increase was awarded. Of course, we're all watching, aren't we? As a result of the budget yesterday, there was no announcement in terms of public sector increases, but I think the writing is on the wall this year that maybe there could be the possibility there would be no increase, or that it would be less than 2%. So that does vary each year, but it's normally, on the last few years, it's been around about 2% for all of the categories of staff that the clerk referred to earlier, and that would be Gold Book, Grey Book and Green Book employees within the Fire Authority.
Thank you.
Okay, is any more questions, or are we all okay now with this agenda item and the report? Fine, I think it's back. Oh, sorry, Richard.
Sorry, Chair. Just I just wanted to sort of pick up on the gender pay gap for female and BAME. We were underway at the moment in terms of gathering that data, collating that data, so that we can aim to get the reports ready for end of March, which is usually around the time. I've just recently been informed that due to a new payroll system, there could be some delay in that because they haven't run the report using this new payroll system. So I just wanted to inform you on that. I'm currently awaiting, the period of time, the period of delay that may occur as a result of that. And if I can get that before, obviously, this meeting ends, then I'll be able to inform you of that. Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
You're welcome.
So, Chair, just to go back to the recommendations, though, these are the ones that I would ask the members to consider. So A is approval of the proposed pay policy statement 21-22 at Appendix A, and B is that I, as your clerk, be authorised to add to the pay policy statement the gender pay gap reporting for 2020, and for BAME staff, those statistics also when available. And I will commit to do that as soon as that information is available, and then I can bring it back to your attention once I've done it at your next available.
That's great. I think we understand the difficulties and the timings and why these things aren't included. There's nothing we can do about those timings, really. It's beyond our control. And so, of course, we're happy for those to be added as soon as they are available, notwithstanding some of the issues that Richard has made about the new payroll system. So if we're all happy with those recommendations, I will propose. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Right, so that concludes agenda item 7. Let me now just scroll through all my screens to get my script and my agenda back up. So we are now agenda item 8, annual review of the remuneration of Chief Fire Officer, Chief Executive. Back to you, Amanda.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. So this is linked to the paper we've already considered, but this recommendation is that you're asked as a committee to recommend to the Fire Authority that there be no local pay increase for the Chief Fire Officer for 21-22, and simply that we note the national pay award for him of 2% from the National Joint Council Pay Award, which applied from the 1st of January 2020. So if I can explain by way of background, under the Gold Book, which is where his terms and conditions are set out, there is a 2-track approach for determining his pay. There's the national announcement, so negotiations take place, and then the National Joint Council will announce each year what the decision is in relation to his pay. And then there's also a local element to his pay award, so you as members and as a fire authority collectively can decide to award him a top-up if you believe that's appropriate. So I have spoken to your Chief Fire Officer on your behalf, and he has confirmed that he does not seek any top-up. He is completely content with the National Pay Award, which was announced in November, which took effect from 1st of January 20. Obviously, you bear in mind that we are waiting another announcement in relation to the pay award from 1st of January 21. But actually, this has made your job quite simple, because I'm just simply asking you to note and endorse the National Pay Award for Chief Fire Officers. So unless I can help you further.
Are we all okay to note and agree with that? Yeah, do we need that formally proposed and seconded, Amanda? Or yeah, okay, so proposed, and I think it was Councillor Bromley who seconded. Great, excellent. So moving on.
So we can now invite people back in. Okay. So we're going to do the HR update. So if I can just have a moment just to let people back in the room. And hopefully they will all be there and not doing something embarrassing. There we are. Okay, we've all got people. I think we've got everybody on screen now. Have we lost Simon? Is Simon around?
I'm here, Amanda, but I'm having slight trouble with the IT for some reason. It keeps cutting in and out.
Okay, all right, no, that's fine. You're there, good. Okay, so Chair, over to you.
Right, okay, so we're on to agenda item 9 now, which I presume is over to Karen with the HR and recruitment update. Karen, could you try to make it as brief as possible? Sorry, I'm just aware of so many items we've got to get through, and I actually need to leave slightly earlier today. Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair. Well, I hope the paper speaks for itself. It's a fairly brief update for this meeting. I think the only couple of things of note is just to say that the Recruit Training School, which started on the 11th of January, obviously because of the COVID situation, that was quite risky to have 15 trainees all starting and hopefully that with no self-isolation or COVID. I don't want to tempt fate, but at the moment that course is going really well, and the course will finish in April, and those staff will then be out on station. The outreach events, which is now we've started preparing for our next recruitment, which launches on the 6th of April this year. We're doing a lot of outreach, both within the BAME community and also trying to attract more females to apply. And those events are also going really well. I noted in the report that the figures up until the 10th of February, we had 2 more events. So since I wrote this paper, we've got another 2 towards the end of March. So we're hoping that will really reach out to some of those people that maybe haven't considered a career in the fire service previously, particularly from some of those underrepresented groups. Obviously, I'll keep you updated as we go through the selection process. We normally report on the statistics throughout the campaign. It's also worth noting that since this paper was written, a decision was taken by Assistant Chief Fire Officer Simon Shilton to remove the criteria of having a driving licence to be eligible to apply to be a firefighter. That has been a criteria that has been in place for many years, and most fire authorities have the same criteria. But we're very aware that that could be a barrier to many people, particularly from underrepresented groups or those who are less affluent, who can't afford to drive or maybe live in the centre of city where there's good public transport networks. So what we've done is we've removed that criteria as a trial for this recruitment, and we will look at the statistics very carefully to monitor that, to see if that has been given an advantage and increase the percentage of people from underrepresented groups that are then eligible to apply. And obviously I'll report back to you at a later meeting on the impact that that decision has had. Also at the next meeting, we'll look at the discipline and grievance cases. What I can assure you is we've got a very low number of cases, but of course every case is unfortunate, and we want to learn the lessons from that. And we want to report back to you on any trends or anything that we're doing to be more proactive and to reduce further any issues of grievance or discipline within the service. I suppose the only other thing to look at is we've got a transformation team in place. We're doing quite a lot of support. There's a lot of stuff around staff welfare towards the end of this report, and we're doing some work with the transformation team to make sure that People are more easily able to access policies, sources of help and support. And we've had a number of wellbeing workshops which we're running for staff. So one happened earlier on this week. We're very conscious that particularly our corporate staff are mainly working from home at the moment. That can be quite isolating. And our uniformed staff have been doing a very, very difficult job over the last year. It's a difficult job anyway, and with the pandemic on top, that has added potentially sometimes to anxiety levels, etc. So it was just to reassure you that we're taking the well-being of our workforce really seriously and putting a lot of measures in place to make sure they are supported throughout this difficult year. I'd throw it open to any questions.
Excellent, thank you, Karen. That sounds really well thought out and some really positive notes in there and really perceptive, you know, considering some of the barriers such as the driving licence. So it'll be interesting to see if that does make an impact. Before I hand over to Councillor Khan, just another note that if there are any outreach engagements, events, do let us know, because it can be that we can also share that through our social media. Over to Councillor Khan.
Thank you. Just on the driving license point, I just wanted to ask. It's really positive. It's really good, and I think the authority deserve a thanks, a vote of thanks. But also at the same time, I was just wanted to know that if people come forward applying, not having a license, would there be then hopefully the success into their endeavors to join the authority, and then will they be encouraged then to take lessons and facilitate that lessons and to have subsequently have a license?
Thank you for the question. That's a really good question. Yes, I think longer term, it is essential for a firefighter to have a driving licence, not just to drive operationally, so to drive the fire appliances, but also, as you know, they work 365 days a year, different shifts, and on, you know, some of our stations aren't easily accessible by public transport. And we also have something called detached duty, where somebody may be sent to another station to cover because of shortfalls in cover on that particular day, and they need to be able to drive because they need to transport all of their fire kit. So what we will do is we will be working with those employees. If they are successful and they're given a contract but they don't have a driving licence, we will be actively encouraging them, and it will be within their contract that we would expect them to have a driving licence within 2 years, so at the end of their development phase. Obviously, hopefully then they'll be getting a salary, and we would do all we can to help and support them. We did look at whether we could provide driving lessons for them. Unfortunately, at the moment, due to our resilience, we're not able. Our driver training team are looking mainly at, you know, training drivers to drive operational vehicles, but we will work with those employees to actively help them to achieve their driving licence within that 2-year period.
Excellent. Excellent.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Bromley.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Karen. Just to sort of say that I just thought the measures taken were very impressive to include more diverse communities. I was very impressed by what I read, and just to sort of take up on further on what Councillor Khan was saying about the driving licenses. I mean, you know, like younger people tend not to be drivers so much as the older generation. So I think it's very encouraging that step was taken. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that comment. Any others? No? Well, thank you very much, Karen, for the report. And we now move on to agenda item 10, which is a verbal cultural survey update. I think that's over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to announce that we have commissioned a supplier for the cultural survey rerun. The contract was awarded to a company called Opinion Research Services, and for this rest of this report I'll refer to them as ORS. So this happened over the last couple of weeks, and we've had a couple of meetings with them to obviously introduce ourselves and establish the way forward. ORS have had extensive experience working with fire and rescue services over the last 3 decades, and have worked with over 30 plus fire and rescue services a lot of them on cultural surveys, as they are with us. So we're very happy to have them on board and very confident they will produce good work for us. So this time round, it will be a shorter survey, not in 2 phases as the 2018 one conducted by Glasslift. It will be an online quantitative survey that will involve all staff members and all members also. This should take around 12 weeks, but there is some flexibility, as obviously we're now moving out of sort of lockdown restrictions, and there may be some potential constraints, but they've assured us that they can remain flexible. But we are aiming for around 12 weeks for a turnaround, and obviously ending up with the reports and analysis at the end of that period. We've had a number of inception discussions, and we are at the moment at the survey design stage, where we're looking at the previous questionnaire and the questions within that questionnaire, seeing if they are appropriate for to run again this year, but also paying due attention to the 4 key themes that came out in that first survey around command and control, staff being underrepresented and undervalued, and close-knit teams. We will look to compare where we've moved from 2018 to now, and that end report analysis should give us an idea of the direction of travel and what we need to do to go forward to obviously continue evolving the culture within our service. As I said, we are at the currently at the design stage, and we intend to complete this during next week, where we will meet with our culture club focus group, and then once that stage is actually completed, we will send that back to ORS, and then they will produce a draft survey for us, and then we'll move on to the next stage, which will be the engagement phase, where obviously we'll send out that questionnaire to all staff and also fire authority members. We have paid due note to the type of questions that will go to fire authority members, because as we look at the questions previously produced, a lot of those won't be relevant to fire authority members. So there possibly will be some design around different types of questions for fire authority members. So we are paying due attention to that also. And just finally on that point, corporate communications will be putting out a communications piece for the service next week. So everybody will be informed about what's going on, the reason why we're doing it. There will be, again, particular attention paid on privacy and confidentiality, which I'm sure many people will be concerned about. GDPR rules and principles will be applied there, and obviously we want to reassure staff and members of that so that we can get as good a response rate as possible. I think we were talking about 70%. If we can hit that and even go above that, that would be a great achievement for us. Yeah, that's all I've got on the culture survey. Any questions on that at all?
Can I just say that I don't have number 10 in my pack?
Yeah,
just a verbal update.
The reason it was a verbal update, Councillor Jacobs, is because there was no result of a survey to report to you. What we were waiting to do was to award the contract, and so what Richard has done is just outlined the steps to award the contract to the
because there's nothing here to say.
So you will get a report when there is actually a survey, the results that we can report to you.
Good.
Are there any other questions or comments? Sorry, Richard, can you just reiterate when there may be an anticipated start date of the survey? I know that might be a little difficult.
Yeah, there has been a little delay. The evaluation and moderation part of the process was slightly delayed. So we are about a week and a half behind, but there possibly will be a chance to catch up in that 12-week period. So, we've had a couple of discussions, one this week, talking around the design of the questionnaire. Quickly turned around with our focus group. We have a meeting on Monday next week, and we want to obviously complete that section of the process.
I mean, it's important not to rush, isn't it, and make sure we get it right. My point, I guess, was more from my own interest in terms of I won't be standing for re-election in Bristol, but I'd very much like the opportunity to input into the section going to authority members. And I would suggest that we get that out to anyone else who either isn't standing or isn't elected, but is on the current authority board.
Yeah, I mean, without being able to give you a definitive date, I would estimate around between 2 and 3 weeks before we can actually, start the actual wheels in motion in terms of people getting that survey out. Obviously, we have to consider, it's an online survey, and we have to consider those that may not have access to email and may have to do a paper copy as well. So, again, like you say, we have to take those into consideration and ensure that we do get a best quality survey out there.
Okay, that's fine then. So I would just ask that if it happens to be after elections in May, then can the survey still go to anyone who's part of the authority now, who may not be part of the authority after May? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. We had a couple of hands up.
I think, Chair, we had Councillor Tucker and the Chief Fire Officer.
Okay, let's go to Tucker first, please. Richard, I should say.
That's all right. I get called both. Reminds me of school. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the report, Rich. Very informative, and I'm always keen to sort of get people's views, and surveys are always the best way of doing it. Of course, getting the response rates is always the hard bit, and you mentioned the 70%. You confident you can get that? Hopefully that will be achieved, but is that something that you figure you think you'll get the 70%? I know what it's like, sort of chasing people around, and people are a bit remiss sometimes.
Yeah, and I think so, Councillor Tucker. I think people have been waiting for this for quite a while now, and we've done a lot of. I've reported before that we've done a lot of interim work around that culture awareness sessions, the chance to capture people's feelings around how the culture is at the moment, how far we've travelled. So we've had some, a lot of feedback and a lot of requests for, when this rerun is going to happen. So I think, I'm pretty confident that we will get that 70%. And as I say, hopefully, if we can get above that, then that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may come in and add to that conversation, this is really important for us in terms of where we are on our journey as an organisation. We did this a couple of years ago. We said we would do it every couple of years to sense check where we are. I said when I came into the service that the improvement journey would take about 5 to 6 years, and we're about halfway through that now. So it's really important that we get a real sense check about our organisational journey as well as our cultural journey. We achieved 70% last time because we were up front and said, right, this is going to be completely anonymous, it's going to be done independently, that we'll publish the report on our intranet pages before the Service Leadership Board see it, and so on and so on. So those clear messages went out to all staff members, and we'll do the same again this time, because it's absolutely appropriate and important that everybody in our organisation has a voice, that everybody in our organisation has the ability to use that voice and the capacity to use that voice, and what's more, that's listened to. And for me, this is really important. It's a really important moment for us to say, okay, we set out to achieve certain things. Where are we now? Because then that gives us that gap about where, our future vision and where we are with regards to that journey. So thank you.
Okay, good. Right, so if there's no further comments, we note that verbal update. Thank you very much, Richard. And we look forward to hearing more about that in the coming weeks. So we move on now to Firefighters Apprenticeships, which sounds exciting and encouraging. And I'm guessing it's back over to Karen.
Be myself or Karen can be joined.
Oh, right, okay, either or.
We may do a double act on this one, I think.
Yeah. So members are asked to note this report. Members may recall back in 2019, members agreed to utilise the Apprenticeship Pathway as an opportunity for a different route, if you like, into the role of a firefighter. So traditionally, we have currently one route into the role of a firefighter through our current recruitment process, where we recruit for an individual to be ready to begin a training school to start the training, become a professional firefighter over a 12-week period before going on to an operational fire station, and then continuing their learning from that point for a further 18 months to 2 years before they become a competent firefighter. This gives the apprenticeship levy that was introduced for organisations with a salary above £3 million has opened up a further opportunity for us to reconsider an additional pathway into the role of a firefighter by the use of an apprenticeship style scheme. Now, what that enables us to do as a service is that enables us to revisit the entry requirements, so the initial standards prior to that. So that allows us to revisit those and also then use a two-year apprenticeship program, which is accredited by a local provider, to give somebody an opportunity to learn about the full role and scope of the fire and rescue service, including all areas of the service for prevention, protection and response over a 2-year period before they would take up the role as an operational firefighter. That also allows us the opportunity, because we are able to review the standards of entry, is to utilise that time to work with those apprentices to get them up to the right level of standard entry level, in particular around fitness, which has been an area that we have had some challenges in the past, particularly for our female applicants in the entry process. So it gives us an opportunity to work with them through their fitness and their strength and their training, as well as giving them the technical skills necessary. So this report, members, is for noting. It is to also to highlight to members that it was put on pause last year as a result of COVID and all things around interaction and new entrants into the service, but really to make members aware that we have allocated a budget that is held in reserves at the moment for the purpose of recruiting up to 6 firefighter apprentices, which is a slightly different model alongside our current recruitment process that we have in place at this moment. And our current timeframes, taken into consideration, timing with our present recruitment process for our recruit school in January 2022, is that we will open up applications towards the latter part of this year in autumn, with a view for an appointment in the early months of first quarter of 2022. That would allow the organisation sufficient capacity aligned to other recruitment pathways that we have in place. I'll pause there, members, because I'll allow Karen if she wants to add anything to the paper.
Thank you, Simon. I think the only point I would like to add is it links to the update I gave earlier on our recruitment. You may be aware that we normally get between 800 to 1,000 applicants for our standard firefighter programme, which means that many people that aren't successful within that process because it's so competitive could still be a very good firefighter. And what we hope is that by having this different process is that, one, it will help on our diversity, but it will also mean that some of those people who just maybe aren't quite there or can't compete with 900, 1,000 other applicants, that this gives them another opportunity to do so. And I think that will have a really positive impact, or I hope it will have a positive impact on our diversity. And again, we would keep you updated throughout in terms of our stats and decisions that we make in terms of the selection process for that campaign.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Simon. Do we have any questions or comments?
Just comments, Chair. I think it's the apprenticeship is one of the best thing can happen for many people who are kind of behind in terms of education or their confidence, because it's just sort of nourishing them slowly, gradually. Many young people in the community, or even adult, into their 20s plus, 25 and 30s, still lacking that level of confidence whereby they can go to face some interviews and this and that, all this daunting process. And it's one of the best way to bring people into any system of public or private initiatives, and really good job that it has been introduced in Fire Authority as well.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. If there's no other comments or questions, we can note that and move on to our next agenda item, thank you, which is back over to Simon, and it's the independent investigation outcomes.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the paper in front of you today is a report to update yourselves on our response to the outcomes of an employment tribunal, which is held in January 2016, relating to a former employee. I also would like to highlight to members the background. So this began in early 2013, where the former employee raised a grievance in connection with a job offer made to them for a locality administrative assistant, which had been made on a temporary basis because they wished to take the offer, the job offer, on a job share basis. The former employee reported to their manager that they were finding the recruitment process stressful, and the former employee raised a grievance relating to the recruitment process, which was not upheld following a grievance hearing. They were given an extended period in the new role to allow time to recruit a job share partner. Between 2013 and 2015, the relationship between the former employee and the service gradually deteriorated to include additional grievances, allegations, and period of sickness and absence from work. During 2014, the service made various attempts to resolve the former employee's grievance, and also at the same time, additional counter grievances were also submitted. The service then took on a period of mediation, attempted mediation, but unfortunately the mediation did not resolve the matters in hand. During the attempted resolution of the grievance, the former employee became the subject of a discipline investigation. To allow the discipline investigation to take place, the former employee was suspended, and the conclusion of the discipline was that it was at a level 3 discipline, which culminated in the outcome of which where the employee was dismissed from the service. Following dismissal from the service, the former employee progressed with an employment tribunal against the service on the following grounds: breach of contract, victimisation and unfair dismissal following the termination of their employment on June the 17th in 2015. The employment tribunal took place in January of 2016 with the following judgment issued by the courts. The tribunal declared that the respondents' actions in suspending the claimant and initiating discipline proceedings against them amount to victimisation under Section 27 of the Equality Act 2010. The claimants claimed that their dismissal was an act of victimisation did not succeed, and the claimants' claim of unfair dismissal did not succeed. And the claimant's claim of breach of contract in respect of notice of pay was upheld by the courts. Following that, the service was committed to understand and address the issues that were raised by the former employee, which also repeated in the Home Office report, which was published in 2017, in particular pertaining to the employment, retention and treatment of BAME employees and staff across the service, and also to see what it could gain further understanding and learning with any disproportionate treatment that was faced by BAME staff in particular. The service then took on the role of working with the former employee to understand those lessons and to understand the experiences, and also work with Stand Against Racism and Inequality to agree and commission an independent investigation and agree with all parties the terms of reference for that investigation. Stand Against Racism and Inequality represented the former employee, and I engaged with the former employee and SORI to hopefully try to understand from their perspective and also build a positive relationship collectively together so that we could recognise and learn organisational learning. The end result of that has been that there has been some organisational learning and some recognition. We've also worked a lot more closely with Stand Against Racism and Inequality, and we have a service level agreement where they support the service with training, also act as a critical friend and a point of contact for community engagement and also any policy review. And for members' awareness, what I would like to do now, members, is read out the letter that we sent to the former employee and the details within that letter. You will note that there's been some reductions in terms of personal data within that letter. So I will try to replace that without breaching any data protection. In 2015, an employment tribunal issued a judgment in relation to a claim brought against Avon Fire and Rescue Service by the former employee. The tribunal did not conclude that the former employee was unfairly dismissed. However, it did conclude that organisational learning improvements could be made in relation to how you were treated. We accepted the employment tribunal's findings that it, and open quotes, concluded that the claimant's suspension and the decision to instigate disciplinary proceedings against them were acts of victimisation under Section 27 of the Equalities Act, but that the dismissal of the claimant was not an act of victimisation, close quotes. We therefore would like to apologise to you in that regard. In response to your email to Stand Against Racism and Inequality dated the 28th of September 2020, which we received on 17th of November 2020, you referenced the opinion of the Home Office report in that it stated, open quotes, it is also worth noting that the Employment Tribunal commented that this was a matter of misconduct as opposed to gross misconduct. This was the only person to be dismissed by the authority on the grounds of misconduct, open brackets, as opposed to gross misconduct, close brackets, in the last 3 years. Moreover, while 12 employees had a finding of gross misconduct against them, only 7 of those were dismissed, close comments. In response to this opinion to the dismissal through misconduct, the tribunal recorded that, open quotes, we concluded that the evidence before the panel taken altogether was adequate to establish misconduct and that redacted information of former employee held a responsible belief in the misconduct and reasonable investigation having been concluded, close comments. Open comments. We concluded, however, that the decision to dismiss was within the range of reasonable responses open to a reasonable employer, close comments. It also went on to conclude, open comments, that although we might have reached a different decision to that reached by the respondent, it was not possible to say that the respondent's decision to dismiss for the reasons found was outside the range of response of a reasonable employer, close comments. Whilst the tribunal acknowledged it was within the range of a reasonable response, we apologise for the distress that has caused you during the misconduct hearing and following the final decision by the hearing officer. We also set the Employment Tribunal's findings in relation to a dismissal in that it, open comments, concluded that the claimant's misconduct did not amount to gross misconduct as contended by the respondent, and that although there were grounds for dismissal, there were not grounds for summary dismissal, close comments. We therefore would like to apologise to you for the decision reached to summary dismiss you without notice at that time. We are committed to understanding and addressing the issues raised by you, which were also repeated in a Home Office report, which was published in July 2017, especially pertaining to the employment, retention and treatment of BAME staff, and we wanted to see what had happened in particular to you so we could gain further understanding of identified issues and disproportionality faced by BAME staff in particular. We worked with yourself and Stand Against Racism and Equality to agree the terms of reference that all were happy with. Accordingly, we commissioned a fully independent review in collaboration with yourself and SORI, the redacted name of the individual who undertook the review, a barrister with particular expertise in employment law and equality issues, was commissioned to undertake this work. We accept the conclusion of the report and where lessons could be learned, and we have responded positively with a programme of improvement, and members will be aware of the DICE improvement programme. We acknowledge that this does not change your circumstances, but we do apologise for the fact that the organisational lessons were not addressed sooner. You served as an employee of Avon Fire and Rescue Service for 29 years, and it is deeply regrettable that your employment came to an end in the circumstances it did. We empathise that after 29 years service, your departure left you feeling upset about the outcome for a prolonged period. We accept that the grievance was not followed in accordance with best practice, and we accept that the service approach at that time deprived you of full and fair opportunity to air your views in a meeting, and that all employees should have such opportunity as part of an effective grievance procedure. We would therefore like to apologise. Looking more broadly at the engagement of the treatment of BAME employees by the service, we accept the findings of the independent report, and that improvements need to be made in relation to ensuring fairness and promoting diversity across all staff groups. We are committed to addressing this, hence our commissioning of the independent investigation, and are pleased to note that we have already taken significant strides towards acting upon both the Home Office report and the independent report by embedding an inclusive and fair culture where all staff feel valued and confident that any issues they raise will be dealt with appropriately. We will continue to ensure this remains a priority for the service. Stand Against Racism and Inequality is now a formal partner with Avon Fire and Rescue Service, and we continue to work together to promote an ongoing improvements and effective community engagement. We would like to take the opportunity to thank you and SORI for pursuing this matter and working with the service to ensure we continue to acknowledge the lessons learned in relation to your experience to influence ongoing change. On behalf of the service, we apologise for the way in which your complaints were handled and trust that everybody involved can now move on positively. And that is signed by the Chairman and the Chief Fire Officer members. Wanted to bring that to the attention of members. We now believe that we now consider this matter to be closed, and that we have met and all of our commitments, both to the outcomes of the investigation, to the Home Office report, and also engaging with the former employee, which we once again thank for their engagement with the service. And I'll just hand there for any questions, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for that report. And whilst it happened before I was here, and most of us actually would have been here, it has been ongoing to get to this point. And I'd also like to echo the apology to this individual. I think it's a very upsetting scenario, actually, and one that has informed much of our cultural review and journey ahead, and is highly regrettable at the least. I do also think it's quite a technical letter, and I think that is needed in places, but we must always remember we are talking about people's lives and society, and how we wish to inform the type of society that we wish to see going forwards. I also question this independent review. Could we just be reminded of when that took place? Because there's been various reviews and information that have come to us over the years, but I'm not convinced that everyone on this People and Culture Committee has even seen the independent report. And I think it's important that everybody has the opportunity to. Right, who else has questions? Councillor Bromley and then Councillor Khan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Simon, for your report there. It was just a question really about the recommendations from the report. And could you give us any examples of any of these recommendations that are being carried forward, you know, and put into action?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. So some of the recommendations were around culture, around reviewing of policies, which we've been reporting back to the People and Culture Committee, and also around effective staff engagement as well, understanding the importance of diversity across our workforce, and we're putting you know, a lot of effort and time into increasing our diversity. We've had various reports both today and in previous People and Culture Committee meetings, to provide you with updates of the ongoing work. So they're not one-off pieces of work. They are influencing our direction of travel. Certainly by working with building that relationship with Stand Against Racism and Inequality, we are tapping into their expertise. They do act as a critical friend to us for make sure that we continually maintain a journey of improvement and understanding.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.
Is it Councillor Khan? Did you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Simon, and all those who worked quite hard on this. But at the same time, that individual was working 29 years for the authority. And that is something I think would be painful for any one of us to be gone through such a situation. And as we have seen, of course, we as Chair has mentioned that this is a very technical, fine-lining letter, as well as Councillor Bromley mentioned that we haven't, and Cleo, that we haven't seen the report as well, which would have been nice to see. However, as Richard Stokes earlier on was giving us this, his verbal report on cultural issues and changes and the aim and ambition on how we bring this to our everyday life. It's cultural changes does not mean that a assimilation. It means like we are respecting each other, each other's culture, why we are working together in any environment, whether it's a public or private body or it's our everyday life. I also understand that, this has come to my knowledge as soon as I was appointed to this committee. The individual has contacted me and raised, and she has explained her case to me and so on. And of course, subsequently, I have contacted some of you, and I'm happy to see that we have reached to this point today, that she is happy to receive this letter. But at the same time, I think I have mentioned it I believe in the last meeting as well. It's not necessarily what happened today with this case particular. It's all about understanding of individual case. And what we see quite often in our society is that we do not want to listen each other. This is a culture, whatever may the reason being, we don't want to listen to each other. Once we listen with little bit of patience, we can find a solution easily, but we don't listen to each other, whether it is in organizations or may it be in political arena. We don't want to listen each other. Once we listen each other, we can find the solution. And this is a prime example of what happened to these individuals. If that individual's case was listened within the organization, things would not have gone so far. That would have been resolved long before it gone to the tribunals and all this. Now we are almost bound to send an apology letter to this woman by her persistence. And it's rightly so. I commend her. I commend her for doing that, not only for herself, for the entire community, and also commend all of you that you have worked with Sari and herself and taken this matter so seriously. It's not just, as I said, it's not just one case. These kind of cases might recur because we all are different human beings. We all have different way of thinking. And just one simple word of listening each other, having that patience, can resolve so many problems in our society, in our everyday life. So thank you all for this.
Thank you, Con. Really important points made there. I have Richard Stokes, your hand up. I've noticed no one's actually used the chat function as I outlined in the Zoom guidelines, but never mind. We go to Richard and then we go to Councillor Jacobs, and then over to our Chief. Richard, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of echo on Councillor Khan's points about listening. And, you know, I'm aware of this case and had some involvement in it. And I mean, there is a lot of lessons to be learned there. And in terms of seriousness, I've been trying over about a year now to try and get together a forum for BME employees. And on my third effort of trying, I have now succeeded. And our first meeting will be this Friday coming. To announce that there is 10 BME employees that are now going to join that group. It is the first. And, you know, I'm hoping that they will remain. The idea of that forum is to have those kind of discussions about lived experiences. It is a chance to listen to our BME employees. We tend to group individuals into a category, BME, LGBT, yet we forget sometimes that they are actually individuals and human beings, and they all have different experiences, despite maybe looking similar, maybe part of the same group. So the idea of that forum is to understand and listen to individuals who is part of that experience within the organization. And with that listening and with that understanding about their experience, we want to ensure that cases like this won't reoccur again. And so I just wanted to just put that out there because I think that that is one of the ways forward in terms of our cultural journey and our embedding of DICE and our embedding of our values and our behaviour framework as well.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for your persistence in setting up that network meeting. And I hope it all goes well tomorrow. I think we had Councillor Jacobs.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
There is a sentence on page 32 from the letter which says, "We would like to apologise to you for the decision reached to summary dismiss you without notice at that time." I take it that nowadays, with similar cases that may arise, that notice might be given. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, that's correct, Councillor, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Mick, you wanted to make your points.
Yeah, if I can, Chair, thank you very much. And some really relevant points being made for sure. And I just wanted to, I suppose, praise what Simon said earlier with regards to this is regrettable. It's a regrettable case for sure, and it's something that we need to learn from. And we set out to try and achieve that learning in the way that we've approached this. Unfortunately, it's taken longer than we would have wanted it to, for sure. What I will do is make sure that members of the committee do have a copy of the independent report. I think that's appropriate. I thought that had been shared with some members, but perhaps not all of this committee, because I think it might have gone to the employment committee previously, but we'll make sure that that is the case, that members do have access and sight of that independent report. What's also really important is we learn from it, and the whole purpose of this was to bring closure to this matter, and also to I suppose have a good forensic look at how we handle things, and to say where we didn't handle things right, apologise in the appropriate way, but also to say what is it that we can learn from it as an organisation. That was the whole ethos and protocol here that we're trying to achieve, and I do believe that we've achieved that or are achieving that. So from that perspective, I think that we are listening, and we have been listening, and the whole ethos here is that we were listening to issues of the past and dealing with them in the right way to ensure that we don't get ourselves in this position again in the future, and that we learn from it, because this is part of our organisational journey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on in all senses of the word with our agenda, with our journey, having taken this on board and doing that deep reflective learning and taking action going forward. At this point, it is where I say the next agenda item is the date of the next meeting, which is the 17th of June. At this point, I have to leave the meeting actually, because I'm getting the press calling me and I've got an engagement I couldn't get out of, unfortunately. So at this point, I would also like to say it's been an incredible experience chairing this committee over the last few years. I've learned a lot. I've enjoyed getting to know all of you. It's been an honor. It's been a major part of my development, not just as a politician, but as a woman. And yeah, this is my last meeting. So thank you all. I will be still staying in touch, still wanting to know what's happening and still being here to support where I can. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your meeting. And Councillor Myers, it's over to you. Sorry.
Chair, I was just going to check who was going to chair the rest of the meeting. So Councillor Myers then.
I'm actually been asked at a minute's notice. That's fine.
Sorry, Councillor Myers. If anyone else would prefer to chair, I'm sure you can delegate.
Okay.
Anyway, goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. So Councillor Myers, I think the next thing you need to do is to read out the resolution about going into private session and then get that seconded.
Yes, thank you. So I'll just check everybody can hear me. Yes. Okay. So this item is item 14, exclusion of press and public, to resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contained exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A, Part 1, Paragraph 1 and 3 of the Local Government Act 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A, Part 2, Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So, is it right to say I'm now proposing this and I need a seconder? And Ruth, if you'd like to second then, could I have a show? We take a show of hands, do we? Yeah. Yeah.
You can take by exception that everyone agrees if they object. So if everybody's happy.
Right, I'd rather take a positive. So all those in favour of passing this moment, if you can make a sign with your hand, that's those there. And I don't believe there's any against because it was everybody, but just checking, and no abstentions. So on that basis, we'll presumably come off live transmission, is that correct? And move on to item.
So then I'll give you a thumbs up. That would be